And today we're going to be discussing aquaponics. We're going to be talking about the local project team and our impact on a community in Bithlo, Florida.
As a group at large, is to see that the communities that we serve have the capacity to sustainably meet their needs. We want to provide water, we want to provide power, we want to provide infrastructure for communities across the globe.
Over here in Bithlo, at the beginning I was talking about the aquaponics system that we have. The whole purpose, first by show of hands, has anybody ever heard of aquaponics or permaculture? You have? Perfect, excellent. So our goal in the community is to provide Bithlo, Florida with sustainable resources. That way they could have currently they live in a food desert, okay? They have soil contamination, they have water that's as dirty as Flint, Michigan. We can't be using certain water sources that they have available. We actually have to be running a hose about a quarter mile away through the school's water filtration system. That way we can provide our system with fresh water. They have a lot of metals in their ground soil, and this is getting into the water supply. So we have wells that are in the process of being finished. These wells have been well over $100,000, well into the $200,000 range for both the well plus the septic. The wells still are not 100% complete, so we have to go through the school's water filtration in order to fill up our system and make sure that it's completely running at all times. So a little bit about the community. It being a food desert, they don't really have the ability to grow. Even if they do want to build their own garden, the plants can't really thrive because their soil is contaminated, you know. There's heavy metals in the dirt, very difficult to grow. Even if you were to bring in your own soil and fertilizer, it's still going to be contaminated by what's below it. So our mission is to use above ground gravel beds, and these gravel beds are, 4 or 5 feet off of the ground. So, we have a system that isn't affected by the soil. We're working around what we have, and that's a big part about being an engineer. You're not always given the perfect, supply list and the perfect community that you're just able to build whatever you want, wherever you want. And so our job is to innovate a solution for this unique community, Bithlo, which is just down the road, down 50 out east. Over here, we have a few students from UCF, now graduated, if I'm seeing them correctly. And the shed that hosts our fish that you'll see later in the presentation, this was, it had to be built from scratch for the most part on the inside. The drywall had to be laid, the insulation had to be laid out. We had to build all the structures that held the fish tanks up above the ground. And a lot of the work, it wasn't like the most, a lot of it was like physical labor, and we had to get our hands dirty and we had to build it from the ground up in order to be where we are now. These are a few pictures from the site. Up here in the top left, this is the butterfly garden. That's a part of Transformation Village. Volunteer UCF and UCF's Engineers That Borders both ensure that there's always like some pretty flowers growing. Over here, we have a painter painting how aquaponics works. This is actually a part of the inside of the shed, and this is where a lot of our aquaculture is inside of. So I know I didn't really explain it 100%, but for those of you that don't know what aquaponics is, we're utilizing aquaculture being fish and hydroponics being the plants in a symbiotic relationship. So we have fish that are, excreting waste throughout the system through natural ways, and that ammonia is mixing with microbes in the system, and this chemical reaction between the ammonia and the microbes are what's causing the nitrates to form, and these nitrates are being absorbed by the plants and also, unfortunately, algae. So in order to make sure that the nitrate levels are high, we need to eliminate algae from our system. So not only is it like developing aquaponics, it's also preventing things that could cause issues in our system from happening. So over on the left-hand side, we have basically what I was saying, fish produce waste, microbes and worms are in the system. The chemical reaction between the microbes and the ammonia from the waste causes nitrates to form. Plants love nitrates, absorb them up, that's their fuel. And then the plants in turn clean up the water for the for the fish to live in a clean area. This is the inside of the shed that hosts all of our fish. We have 4 fish tanks and an IBC tank in total, we have about 50 to 75 fish. The system's capacity is more along the lines of 100, so we're still implementing more fish. That way we could have more waste, and that more waste means more nitrates.
And more veggies at the end of the day.
Yeah, more food for the community. All the food that is grown here, all the veggies, all the herbs is donated to the community, because the nearest, I believe the nearest supermarket is about a mile and a half away, and they have to cross a really dangerous road. State Road 50 has a lot of construction. There's a lot of just like the chaotic nature of the area. It makes it very difficult for people to commute all the way down to the supermarket if they're available to. And they have to bring all their supplies back. So we're trying to provide these sustainable resources so the community doesn't need to go all the way to the supermarket, that they could just pick their plants, they could learn about aquaponics, maybe they could even grow it outside on their property. You know, like just introduce the sustainable culture to a community. Next slide. Future projects. So right now, the system that we have is very large, and in order to do like a demo on it, it takes a lot of time. So what we're doing is we're building a more like we're building a smaller scale model, and this model is going to be used to, we can deconstruct it, and we can basically put it in a vehicle and move it around. That way if we go to like local high schools or middle schools or elementary schools, we can have like a working model, not just like a slideshow, but an actual model of what we're doing, smaller scale. That way when people do come up to the larger site, it's not all unfamiliar territory to them. They're already familiar because they've been able to see one hands-on, play around with the system, you know, feed the fish, maybe pick some plants, taste some veggies, and learn about it.
How long took to build the whole complex?
The entire complex has been built over the past 2.5 years, and we're still doing maintenance on the system. So this isn't something that happened overnight. It's not something that happened in one semester. This has been going on for several years now. And each year, new members come in, old members leave because they graduate. This is a club at the University of Central Florida, so sometimes people become part of other organizations and they can't dedicate as much time, but we're still out here in Bithlo doing work. We have a commitment with Bithlo for 5 years, and even afterwards, we're still gonna be able to go and help. You know, they're down the road from UCF. We're teaching the students at Orange County Academy how to maintain the facility. That way, when we are gone permanently, they're already fully being able to manage their own system by themselves. And it serves an educational purpose, you know, like it's really cool getting students engaged in STEM, and sometimes all it takes is a really cool activity involving fish and plants. So this over here on the middle, this is like a plant wall. This isn't something that we've built, but this is something that we're attempting to replicate right now. Basically what we're doing is we have the back wall of the shed. We have a lot of real estate that we're not using to our advantage. So what we're gonna start doing is using it to our advantage, and using it, since we can't have plants on the ground because of the soil contamination, we can have it above ground over on the back wall of the shed, and it'll also look really nice. So just more resources for the community, and it also has a nice aesthetic appeal. Over on the left, it's just another example of what the middle picture is, and that's the same thing, just running water, going down, growing plants.
Another aspect of what we're trying to do, because the water in the community is so bad, we're looking into a water catchment system so that we can supplement our aquaponics without ever tapping into the resources around us. There is a lot of square footage just on top of the shed. So why not catch that water? Why not store that water? We as an organization have a lot of experience in water filtration. Down in Haiti, which was UCF, Engineers Without Borders at UCF's first major project, that was our project, was to go down there and provide filtered water to the community that lived there, about 300 people. So as I said, we've got a lot of resources to draw on with that. So literally just catching it off the roof, tossing it into some drains, passing it through a natural filtration system, which amounts to sand, stone, and a bacteria filter. And the bacteria does the largest amount of the stuff that we really worry about in our water, the stuff that you can't see. The bacteria takes care of that. It's one of those things where you hear bacteria and you get a little nervous, but the truth is, a lot of bacteria does a lot of good stuff for us in the natural environment. And there is a way with this filtration system to make sure that it is just the bacteria that you want. And we've got a fair amount of experience with doing just that. So we would collect that water and we would keep it up high enough so that it could be gravity fed into the rest of our system and hopefully eliminate even the need to tap into the larger pump system, which has been built for us and which they're just basically trying to cut through the red tape to allow us to be able to make use of it right now. It's been a process of about 60 years. And as Orange County grew, as Orlando grew, you want to get your trash and your waste away from you. Where away from you was about halfway between us and the Space Coast. It was a big open area that didn't have a lot going on. It was just kind of a lot of swampy area from their point of view. So there's 3 or 4 dumps within a stone's throw of this elementary school. Unfortunately, some people, dumps can work. You can make a dump that falls within certain guidelines. Unfortunately, some of the people that were running these dumps over the years didn't do that. There was a spot where they dump oil into just your used motor oil when you're getting rid of it. You have to take it to a dump and you pour it into a large cylinder container. The gentleman that ran it for a lot of years thought that it was a much smaller hassle to cut the bottom out of that tank instead of filling it up and dealing with it properly. Saved him a lot of money probably. So that has seeped into the soil over decades. There's a gas station in the area that wasn't shut down properly, and the residual gas from that has been seeping into the water for years. At the very beginning of this project, we looked very in depth as a group at the soil contaminants and the work that had been done by government agencies to analyze that. And it's this weird, complicated process where the soil 10 feet over that way and the soil 10 feet over that way are completely different. And where it seeps is hard to guess at. But it's been long enough now that a lot of it's gotten down into the water table. So the water's very dangerous, and they don't have city water there. Everybody's on septic tanks. Everybody is doing well water. It's really dangerous for them if they're not going deep enough. And I have to admit that our focus with this system is for the students at the elementary school. My personal hope is that the students will not only use this as a food source, but use it as a chance to learn about a little bit of business, take some of the veggies out to the farmers markets that are kind of on the other sides of the tracks, and get exposure to different groups of people, and see that their way of life is not the only way of life, and that there are opportunities that the people around them are trying real hard to give to them, if they're just willing to go get them.